You want it, so you run. You say you want love, or clarity, or that mystical alignment everyone whispers about during overpriced cacao ceremonies. But the moment it gets close, like really close, you pull a Houdini and self-destruct. Not dramatically, of course. You don't set fire to the couch or scream into the void. No, your sabotage is subtle, elegantly tragic. You ghost the opportunity. You pick a pointless fight. You get too busy chasing things that don't even matter. And then you tell yourself a sweet bedtime story, it just wasn't the right time. But deep down, you know what this is. You're terrified of receiving the very thing you claim to crave. Carl Jung once said, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. And receiving, actually letting something good land, requires exactly that. You would have to sit still. Let the mask drop. Let the illusion of control melt. And here's the kicker, you'd have to risk being seen, not the curated you, but the trembling, beautiful mess beneath the scaffolding. You self-sabotage because part of you believes you don't deserve it. And another part believes that if you get it, you'll lose it. The shadow, the unconscious compost bin of your psyche, carries all your early programming. If love was conditional growing up, your shadow now whispers, don't trust it. If success meant disconnection, your shadow says, stay small, stay safe. And if you ever felt invisible unless you were useful, then rest assured, you've built your entire life on being chronically overcommitted and emotionally underfed. That's why when things go well, you get itchy. Stillness feels suspicious. Quiet feels like a setup. You feel like a fraud at your own birthday party. Because you've mistaken chaos for aliveness, and peace feels like a trapdoor. Here's where the paradox sinks in, you're not sabotaging your life because you're broken. You're doing it because your nervous system thinks it's protecting you. And to its credit, it's been doing a stellar job keeping you alive, just not whole. Historians still argue whether Jung's concept of that shadow was meant to be confronted or lovingly befriended. Some think it should be transcended. Others argue it's the gateway to the soul itself. But either way, it's there, and ignoring it doesn't make it disappear. It just turns it into a puppeteer pulling your strings while you wonder why every good thing slips through your fingers like a ghost with commitment issues. Let's pause for a second and address the voice in your head that just said, but I'm working on myself. Sure, you've got the books, the crystals, the guided meditations voiced by that one lady who sounds like a sleepy librarian. But healing isn't a checklist, it's a reckoning. And the first step isn't learning to love yourself more. It's learning to stop flinching every time life hands you what you actually asked for. Imagine standing in front of the thing you want most, real connection, purposeful work, inner calm, and feeling your whole body scream, don't trust it. Don't take it. You'll lose it. You'll ruin it. That's not logic. That's the shadow, and it's been keeping you alive by keeping you small. You don't fear failure. You fear having it and what that might awaken. Because if you get the thing and it doesn't fix you, then what? Here's the dark joke. You're like a person who's been locked in a basement for 20 years and now the door's wide open, but you're arguing with the handle because freedom doesn't feel familiar. That kind of disorientation doesn't mean you're broken. It means you're waking up. So yes, you sabotage what you want most, but not because you're weak or lazy or secretly hate joy. You do it because your internal wiring equates want with danger. And until you dig down and meet the younger self who came to that conclusion, you'll keep circling the same existential parking lot, pretending you're just taking your time. Here's a practical place to begin. When something good enters your life, pause. Literally stop. Notice the reflex. Do you get anxious, distrustful, bored? That's not your intuition, it's your programming. And the fastest way to begin rewriting that code is to stay in the room. Even just a second longer than usual. That moment, the moment you don't bolt, is where the shadow starts to thaw. And please, for the love of Jung, don't try to fix it all at once. You don't need a 90-day transformation plan. You need 5 seconds of honesty. 1 breath of stillness. 1 moment of noticing, oh, I almost ran again. Congratulations. You didn't. That's integration. The mask that got comfortable. You didn't mean to become this version of yourself. It started innocently enough. A little tweak here to be more likable. A small silence there to keep the peace. You learned to laugh when it wasn't funny, nod when you didn't agree, stay when every cell screamed to leave. You became a master of adaptation, a chameleon in a world that hands out applause to the most convincing performance. But one day, you wake up with everything you were supposed to want and feel nothing. Like someone swapped your insides out with packing peanuts and spiritual FOMO. And that's when it hits you, the mask fused with your skin. You've spent so long performing, you forgot what the original script even said. Carl Jung once wrote, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Beautiful, inspiring, And also, kind of terrifying when you realize you have no idea what that even means anymore. Because the roles you've played, caretaker, overachiever, good girl, good boy, rebel, people pleaser, weren't costumes. They were survival gear. You wore them when love came with strings. You performed when truth meant punishment. And slowly, your life stopped being a reflection and became a negotiation. You didn't build a life, you built a witness protection program for your soul. And here's the kicker, the mask worked. It got you attention, approval, promotions, maybe even love. But love that only sees the mask isn't love, it's performance art. And you're tired of rehearsing. Historians still argue whether Jung's concept of the persona, the socially acceptable version of the self, was a necessity or a poison. Some say we need the mask to navigate society. Others claim it's the source of every existential migraine since we started wearing pants. But what everyone agrees on is this: when the mask becomes the identity, the soul starts to starve. You know this starvation. It's the numbness at 3 a.m. even after a good day. It's the anxiety spike before social events. It's the hollow praise that doesn't land anymore. And it's the quiet despair of feeling unseen, even in a crowded room, especially in a crowded room. You want to be known, but you also want to be safe. And your mask promised you both. What it didn't tell you is the cost. Every time you said yes to avoid conflict, every time you downplayed your brilliance to make someone else comfortable, every time you kept quiet to protect someone else's ego, you were paying that cost. With interest. And now, you don't even know what you want anymore. You scroll past job postings and dating apps and 10 ways to heal lists with the enthusiasm of a sea sponge because none of it speaks to the real you. Mostly because you don't trust there even is a real you left to speak to. Dark humor moment incoming. You ever get so good at pretending you convince yourself? Like when you open your fridge, stare at that wilted kale you swore you'd eat, and think, I really am the kind of person who juices. You're not. You're the kind of person who watches 3 hours of existential YouTube philosophy and forgets where you put your socks. And honestly, that version is way more interesting. The problem isn't that you're fake. It's that you had to become someone else to feel safe. And now the question becomes, how do you become it without losing everything? Here's the scary but freeing answer. You don't have to burn it all down. You just have to start telling the truth, tiny truths, whispered at first. The kind that say, actually, I don't want to go to that party. Or, I'm not okay right now. Or even, I don't know who I am without these roles, but I'm willing to find out. That's how you start unmasking without imploding. Yes, some people will leave. Some opportunities will dissolve. The scaffolding will creak. But the ones who stay, the ones who see you without the costume and still reach for your hand, that's real. That's what your soul has been aching for in all those sleepless nights and overthinking spirals. You don't need a new personality. You need a funeral for the version of you that had to keep it all together. Let yourself grieve the mask. It protected you. It got you through hell. But it's not home. It's a hotel lobby where the decor doesn't even match your soul's wallpaper. So here's your homework. Not a 12-step plan or a morning ritual with incense and a playlist. Just this, say one true thing out loud today. Just one, even if your voice shakes. Especially if it does. Let the real you cough, wheeze, whisper. They've been waiting. The shadow behind the sabotage. So why do you keep tripping right before the finish line? Why do you tank the job interview you prepped for all week, text your ex after 42 days of peace, or self-destruct precisely when life starts going well? The answer isn't that you're broken, or stupid, or just unlucky. The answer is that there's a part of you, a very old, very loyal part, that is terrified of getting what you want. Carl Jung called this part the shadow. And no, it's not some evil, smoke-like entity lurking in your psyche like a Scooby-Doo villain. It's every part of yourself you were told was too much, not enough, or wrong. Anger, neediness, arrogance, desire, wildness, shame. Basically, it's your internal haunted house and you're the only one who can tour it without a waiver. And here's the plot twist, your shadow isn't trying to ruin your life. It's trying to protect you from pain, from exposure, from rejection. It learned a long time ago that being too visible meant being a target. So it whispers things like, that dream isn't realistic. Or you're not good enough for that relationship. Or the classic, you'll just mess it up anyway. It sounds like doubt, but it's actually grief in disguise. Historians still argue whether the shadow is formed purely from childhood trauma or if it's also shaped by collective unconscious archetypes Jung loved to talk about over fondue. But regardless of origin, its mission is clear, safety at any cost. Even if that cost is your happiness. Here's how it works, you say you want love. But you sabotage dates or fall for emotionally unavailable people. Why? Because real intimacy requires vulnerability and your shadow remembers the first time your honesty was punished. You say you want success, but you procrastinate or undercharge. Why? Because your shadow remembers being shamed for shining too bright. You say you want freedom, but you stay in routines that slowly kill your soul. Why? Because chaos once followed freedom and your shadow would rather you feel numb than unsafe. Self-sabotage isn't failure, it's fear with a clever disguise. And the only way to stop it isn't by powering through with more discipline or positivity or manifestation hacks. It's by turning toward the saboteur and asking, what are you trying to protect me from? 9 times out of 10, the answer will break your heart and also set it free. Maybe your inner child believes that success means abandonment. Maybe you learned that love equals control. Maybe joy feels like betrayal because someone else had to suffer so you could have it easy. These aren't flaws. They are survival responses. Adaptive genius from a time when you had fewer tools and more danger. Dark humor break, it's like having a smoke alarm that goes off every time you boil water. Technically, it's doing its job. But now you're eating cereal for dinner and wondering why you're emotionally malnourished. And if you're thinking, okay, great, I've met my shadow. Now what? Do I throw it a birthday party? You're not far off. Because here's where the integration part comes in. You don't kill the shadow. You don't shame it or banish it or pretend it's not there. You build a relationship with it. A weird, dysfunctional, slightly uncomfortable friendship. You make room for it at the table, and you ask it to speak, not over you, but with you. Jung believed that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. That quote isn't a warning, it's a roadmap. Every time you name a fear, every time you speak a hidden truth, every time you stop blaming the universe and start listening to your inner saboteur, you take the steering wheel back. It starts small. You catch yourself canceling something that matters and you pause. You hear the old story playing, you're not ready, and instead of obeying it, you get curious. You journal. You speak to a therapist. You let yourself be seen in that ugly, raw moment. And slowly, the sabotage starts to lose its power. You don't fix it all at once. This is not a montage moment with triumphant music and a fast-forwarded glow-up. This is slow and sexy healing. This is cleaning out the psychic attic while sneezing on 20 years of emotional dust. But every time you do it, you reclaim a piece of yourself. Every honest no, every brave yes, every moment you choose alignment over approval, it adds up. You sabotage what you want most because a part of you believes you're safer without it. But the truth is, you're not here to stay safe. You're here to wake up, to remember, to become. And that begins not by rejecting the shadow, but by asking it what it's been trying to say all along. You keep the cage because you built it. Somewhere along the way, you stopped chasing your dreams, not because they weren't worth it, but because every time you got close, your hands started to shake. That's the thing about cages built out of belief systems. They are invisible, self-reinforcing, and weirdly cozy. You don't sabotage what you want because you're bad. You sabotage it because the cage feels safer than the sky. And here's the worst part, you built the damn thing. Carefully, lovingly, out of every childhood survival role and adolescent mask. Out of don't be too loud, don't ask for more, and make sure they like you or you'll die. It's made from quiet people-pleasing, public self-loathing, and private dreams you only let live for about 8 minutes a year, usually while crying in the shower to a song you pretended not to like. Carl Jung called this the persona, the mask we wear to survive the social world. It's the version of you that your parents approved of, your teachers rewarded, your co-workers respected. But here's the trick, it's not you. It's just your audition tape for a role you never really wanted. A walk-in LinkedIn profile with anxiety. The persona isn't the enemy. It's just incomplete. It's what got you through middle school, office politics, and every holiday dinner where you had to pretend everything was fine while dissociating over mashed potatoes. But now, it's starting to rot. And you feel it. You wake up and the mask no longer fits. You catch yourself laughing in a group and realize it doesn't feel like your laugh. You say the right thing and still feel hollow. That's not failure, it's progress. It's the signal that your true self is knocking. And knocking louder. Historians still argue whether the persona ever fully dissolves, or if we just wear it more consciously. But what's certain is this, the moment you realize you're performing, you have a choice. And choice is everything. You sabotage yourself not just because you're scared of failing, but because you're even more terrified of what happens if you don't. Because then, you'll have to become the person who's worthy of love, of joy, of success. And that means giving up the old character. The one who gets sympathy because they are always struggling. The one who plays small so others feel comfortable. The one who knows how to suffer beautifully but doesn't know how to thrive. Dark joke time, self-sabotage is kind of like dating your toxic ex again, but emotionally. It's familiar, dramatic, and you already know the ending. But hey, at least you won't have to buy new furniture. So how do you stop? First, you have to admit that your cage isn't made of circumstance, it's made of identity. You have to look at the parts of you that benefit from staying stuck. Yep, benefit. As in, if you're always in crisis, you never have to risk change. If you're always chasing something, you never have to sit with what you already have. If you're always becoming, you never have to be. This is what Jung meant when he said, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. You'd rather chase enlightenment than confront the idea that maybe, just maybe, you've mistaken healing for hiding. So start here, ask yourself what version of you is doing the sabotaging. Is it the child who had to be perfect to get love? The teenager who learned that being too visible meant being mocked? The adult who decided it was easier to call life unfair than to risk stepping up? Name them, talk to them, write to them, say, thank you for keeping me safe. But I think I can take it from here. Integration doesn't mean deleting your past. It means reclaiming the power you gave away trying to survive it. So instead of asking, how do I stop sabotaging myself? Ask this, what am I afraid will happen if I finally become who I say I want to be? And don't stop at the first answer. Go deeper. Maybe you're afraid your friends won't relate to you. Maybe your family will say you've changed. Maybe success will mean more responsibility, more exposure, more pressure. And maybe you'll realize that freedom isn't as sparkly as Instagram made it look. It's raw. It's real. And it requires grief. Because when you leave the cage, you don't just lose your limitations. You lose the identity that was built on surviving them. And that's the real death nobody warns you about. But once you go through it, once you bury the version of you that only knew how to self-sabotage, something strange happens. You start wanting different things, quieter things, realer things. You start listening to your body instead of your calendar. You start saying no without writing an apology paragraph. You start noticing the gap between what you think you want and what actually nourishes your nervous system. And maybe, just maybe, you stop needing life to be a performance. You can keep the cage, sure. Or you can open the door, step into the discomfort, and start writing your story without the fear script. Either way, the truth remains. You are not sabotaging yourself because you're a mess. You're doing it because, once upon a time, it kept you safe. But safety isn't the point anymore. Becoming is. The life you say you want is terrifying. Here's the irony that punches like a velvet-wrapped brick. The life you secretly ache for, the peace, the power, the presence, is the one your nervous system sees as a threat. You say you want freedom, love, meaning, but your unconscious whispers, sure, but what if we just took another nap and blamed Mercury retrograde instead? Because getting what you truly want isn't just unfamiliar, it's dangerous. At least to the old parts of you. The ones that learned how to survive by shrinking. The ones that equated visibility with vulnerability and success with betrayal of the tribe. Carl Jung once said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Sounds romantic, right? Until you realize what that privilege costs. Hint, everything that isn't you. And if you're like most people post-spiritual awakening, this is the part where you stop. Because to get what you want most, you have to stop playing the role that earned you love for wanting less. Let that sink in. You have to disappoint the people who liked you better broken. You have to grieve the comfort of complaining. You have to become someone who no longer belongs to the old group chat of mutual misery. Historians still argue whether this stage of spiritual development is a one-time ego death or a continuous unraveling. Either way, it hurts. Not because you're doing it wrong, but because it means the armor is finally cracking. And when that armor breaks, all the lies you told yourself for survival start to leak out. Like, if I shine too bright, they'll leave. Or, if I asked for more, I'll lose everything. Or that old favorite, who do I think I am? That last one always hits different. It's the voice of every ancestor who played small, every teacher who misunderstood you, every partner who praised you for being low maintenance while silently resenting your light. That voice doesn't want to ruin you, it just doesn't understand who you're becoming. It still thinks survival is the goal. So how do you move past it? You start by normalizing fear. Not as a problem to fix, but as a signpost. Fear is the body's way of saying, we're leaving the neighborhood of the known. Of course you're scared. You're stepping into a life that doesn't have a script. Dark joke intermission, becoming your authentic self is a lot like deciding to swim in the ocean after living your whole life in a kiddie pool filled with warm mountain dew. Liberating, sure, but also deeply unsettling. So if you're waiting to feel 100% ready before you change, stop. You won't. Do it scared. Do it with shaking hands. Do it while your brain whispers every reason why it's safer to stay small. That's not sabotage, it's the cost of rewiring an identity. But here's the key, make the rewiring practical. Yes, journal. Yes, meditate. But also, set a boundary this week that makes your inner people pleaser sweat. Tell one truth that terrifies you, but do it anyway. Spend 10 minutes a day imagining what it would feel like to live as your truest self. Not the vision board. The feeling. Why? Because your nervous system doesn't speak affirmations. It speaks repetition. It speaks sensation. You have to show it over and over that becoming doesn't mean death. It just means shedding. And eventually, you start trusting that who you are becoming won't burn your life down. Just the parts that were built from fear. Remember that first breakup where you thought you'd die, and then 3 months later you were listening to Rihanna and feeling yourself? Yeah, this is like that. Except now you're breaking up with every lie that ever told you freedom was too expensive. So if you're wondering why you sabotage the things you say you want, consider this. Wanting is easy. Becoming is a blood sport. And staying small is just cheaper in the short term. But the bill always comes due. And when it does, you'll either be sitting in a life you settled for, wondering where the years went, or you'll be standing barefoot in the aftermath of your own courage, whispering, so this is what it means to be free. One costs your potential. The other costs your mask. Pick one. So here you are. Not enlightened. Not fixed. Not suddenly glowing with divine purpose and an Etsy-worthy morning routine. Just aware that you've been playing small. That you've been unwrestling your own becoming. That the sabotage wasn't you being lazy or unworthy or hopeless, it was you protecting a version of yourself that thought smallness meant safety. But here's the part no one tells you: awareness doesn't mean you're behind. It means you're finally ready. Ready to stop spiritual window shopping. Ready to stop using your wounds as your only form of identity. Ready to get out of your head and into the practice of becoming the person your soul already knows how to be. Not overnight. Not perfectly, but consistently. Start with one small act of rebellion against your own self-abandonment. One moment of choosing expansion over contraction. One day where you don't mistake discomfort for a warning sign, but for a green light. You don't need to figure it all out today. You just need to stop pretending you're confused. You're not. You're scared. There's a difference. And fear is not a prophecy, it's a threshold. So step forward. Not as the version of you who has it all together, but as the one who's willing to drop the act, drop the mask, drop the war with yourself. Sabotage isn't your destiny. It's just a side effect of forgetting who you really are. And now you remember.